What is going on, everybody? We are back. We got episode number 81 of the Club and Sub podcast. Tonight, we're going to be talking UFC Vegas. I believe it's 49. We got Bobby Green making his first main event spot, taking on Islam Makhachev. It's a fight that people wanted. This is way more exciting than the alternative. Um, yeah, I'm pumped to get into it. We've already had our first win of the card. Hannah Goldie is no longer fighting on it. So, we're starting off on the right foot here. I don't think there's many great betting spots, but there's a few, so we'll hop into it. We'll chat it up. As usual, we're brought to you guys by betonline.ag. For 50% bonus up to your first $1,000 deposit, use the promo code CLUBSUB. And guys, if you like the show, please drop a like and subscribe. And yeah, with that, you got me, John, at MMA Fox, Lags at Danny_Lags, and Luke at SWR_betting. So, yeah, let's hop right into it here. We got, how many fights do we got here? 12 fights?
11.
Yeah.
11 now.
Oh, right. Cool.
Yep.
So we got 11 fights. Excellent. We're going to start with Victor Altamirano. He's taking on Carlos Hernandez. We got two newcomers here. Lags, any thoughts on this fight?
Pretty low-level fight, to be honest with you. I kind of like Hernandez. I think Hernandez should be favored in the spot. I think the line's about right. I think he's competitive in the striking here. I think, obviously, though, he has a big grappling edge against Altamirano. But it's to me, I don't think his wrestling is that great. So that's why I like tough justification, making a play on him. So it's just a pass for me.
Luke, how about you?
Yeah, off the top, I don't think either should be in the UFC. To be completely honest, I think both of them, there's an argument to be made that they lost both of their Contender Series fights. I think Altamirano clearly lost his Contender Series fight, in my opinion. If Perez didn't slip on a banana peel in the second round, he also probably would have lost. I should say Hernandez probably would have lost his fight. And even if you go back and watch both guys' regional runs, it's not like this pretty run to the UFC. They got nice records, 10-1, 8-1, but it's they're dropping minutes, they're dropping rounds. It's not looking good. I hate this fight, to be completely honest. There's no reason this fight should be taking place in the UFC, in my opinion. But obviously, the issue I have with Altamirano is that he gets stuck on his back. He's a guy that will play jiu-jitsu. He is a brown belt, but he's going to be active off of his back, so there's that. But it's also hard to trust, in my opinion, for Hernandez to come out here and shoot a ton of takedowns. I think it'd be a smart game plan, but I don't know if there's a ton of evidentiary basis for it. I know he's got a ton of subs early, but his tape is crazy limited too. So it's hard to say that at the same time. I think actually the range game that Altamirano brings is probably going to give Hernandez some issues. I think that Hernandez kind of struggles with effective pressure. He kind of needs to get into this type of rhythm to succeed. I think Altamirano might be able to interrupt that. But it's a very high variance fight. You could honestly talk me into saying either guy is minus 200 or a pick 'em being completely justified here. So massive pass for me. I want nothing to do with it personally.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't bet it yet, and I haven't decided if I will or not. But I do have some moderate interest in Altamirano. To both of your points, he does play guard, and it is a concern. But the interesting thing I found is when he actually has tried to get up, he actually does all the right stuff. He does a very good job using a knee shield to make space and working up. In the Candelario fight, when he realized the fight was getting out of reach and he started working up, he did it very technically. So it's kind of weird because I do think he has the tools to get up, but also we've seen enough times him play guard and get stuck there that it is concerning. I faded Altamirano a couple times regionally. I bet Lloyd McKinney against him. The difference is look, I get it. Carlos Hernandez could and can take downs and to get him down. But guys like McKinney and Jared Brooks who really mauled him there, you're dealing with a level of top pressure that's just a lot heavier than what you're going to see from Hernandez here. And I also kind of think Hernandez has put his head in some pretty bad spots against Perez, especially early in that fight. And so I kind of think this is the rare occasion in men's MMA where the guard sub is a reasonably live outcome here if they grapple. And look, on the feet, it's kind of weird because I see a lot of Hernandez takes, and I do get it. Altamirano striking's funky, and Hernandez is probably more technical. The thing is, it's flyweight, right? Neither guy is a KO regionally. I think even with Altamirano's defensive issues, I feel pretty confident that Hernandez isn't very likely to get a KO. And so at flyweight, if you're not likely to get a KO, well, I'm going to skew towards volume. And I think Altamirano is a much better volume striker than he is. He may not be as technical, but he's basically going to spam volume all fight. And so in a flyweight fight where I don't think there's a massive grappling advantage, though granted, again, Hernandez could ride out top time. Honestly, if there wasn't that concern, I would bet Altamirano for a decent amount here. I just think he's going to have a lot of success just getting volume off on Hernandez here. I'd edge him on minutes. I think he's the more dangerous submission grappler of the two. It's just really a question to me of how likely it is he gives up minutes on his back. And unfortunately, the answer is very likely. So I lean Victor. I haven't bet it yet. I'm kind of hoping the line moves out a bit more. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say it's the strongest of takes here. Moving on, we got Ramiz Brahimi. He's taking on Michael Gilmore. Luke, you want to start us off here?
Yeah, I think we all cashed on our homeboy Court McGee in the last outing. Not the biggest Brahimi fan in the world. You see this big of a number next to his name, and you're like, what in God's name? For the 10,000 reasons we mentioned, even betting against him in his last outing. But to me, it honestly makes complete sense here. We're going from Court McGee to a guy in Michael Gilmore who's been finished on the mat, and I think in every single one of his pro, amateur, and tough losses. It's just a prototypical matchup. I think that they're giving a nice bounce back spot too for Brahimi, but he is also coming in on short notice. I think that needs to be noted, where we've already had massive gas tank concerns with the guy to boot on full camps. Now he's coming in on short notice, so it's hard to anticipate he's going to go out there and be Lance Armstrong to begin with. But at the end of the day, I don't really think he needs to. I think he's going to get takedowns early. I think he's going to get to his back, and I think he's going to sub the dude in the first round. Gilmore just hasn't shown very good concepts of takedown defense. Guys have been able to get into dominant positions on him pretty consistently. I think Brahimi is probably one of the better grapplers. I know people will reference the Petrosyan fight. You're like, okay, Luke, well, that went late. But even in watching that fight back, like Petrosyan didn't even really pursue even like a second hook or like overtly pursue submissions even early in that first round, despite being in dominant positions. He kind of just wrote it out, where that's not something that Brahimi is going to do for better or for worse. So I think he's going to get after the guy. The only reason I think Michael Gilmore is in the UFC is because he did a favor for them coming in short notice on tough. Didn't win. They gave him a fight in his debut. He's getting another, they're building him. To me, it's just kind of like a forest through the trees spot. You can't get too wrapped up, in the stylistics, the gassiness of Brahimi, not the greatest striker. This is just still a fight that he should win at a high clip. Like, he can't fuck this up. If he fucks this up,
shouldn't fuck it up. Yeah.
He just really shouldn't, in my opinion. It's a great smash spot for Brahimi, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, Ramiz is fighting for his job, I think, pretty clearly here. I'll be honest. I don't disagree with any of the technical analysis, and I do think on paper, Brahimi should really tear through him. I do think it's mildly concerning that Gilmore is coming down from middleweight here, though, to fight at 170. Brahimi's short notice. He's fighting a guy who's a bit bigger. He can probably get takedowns, yeah, but the one thing that just sticks with me with Ramiz is, like, you go throughout his entire tape, is if he can't get guys out in the first round, that gas tank goes. And it's like, Petrosyan didn't get Gilmore out early in that fight. And look, to your point, Luke, Gilmore didn't really threaten him with much. But I can't help but thinking, like, unless you can tell me that Ramiz is, like, I don't know, greater than 50, 55% to finish this in round one, it's tough for me to think the line is right. But with that said, I mean, I agree with all your points about Gilmore. I don't really rate him. I don't think he's a UFC caliber fighter. The real concerns here are just like, can Ramiz, fight with a grappling heavy approach for more than 5 minutes? And he may not need to. He may just take his back and submit him right away. That is probably, I would say, of all the potential outcomes, it is the most likely. But I still trouble to say it's likely, as in him taking him out in round one at an over 50% clip. And so, with that being the case, it's just like I couldn't get behind Ramiz. I couldn't get behind parlaying him. I do think, I haven't decided if I'll play it. The under is mildly interesting at minus 135 because Ramiz is kind of your classic unders fighter. And unlike, Court, who was very happy to just bully him in the clinch, Gilmore doesn't really have that tool set. So wherever the fight goes, there's probably going to be some danger. Lags, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, don't have a ton. I mean, you guys covered it like smash spot, really, to be honest with you. I think it's a great bounce back spot for Ramiz. I like the under if you're going to play anything because, I mean, laying 4-1 on Ramiz, given the gas tank issues and whatnot that we've mentioned before, it's kind of, it's craziness. So, yeah, I mean, under 2.5 if anything, but it's a pass.
Yeah, another garbage fight. Moving on, we have Jonathan Martinez. He's taking on Alejandro Perez. This is a fun one. Honestly, Perez came back against Johnny Eduardo a couple months ago after a 2-year layoff. I didn't really think he looked particularly good before he got the armbar in that fight. Martinez on the other side, I think I still don't really know what to make of Jonathan Martinez because he has moments where I'm like, this guy has serious power and has a great skill set for the division. And then he has moments like the Davey Grant fight, which, I've seen people say he got clipped, but if you actually watch that fight, as soon as Grant started going forward on him, he kind of unraveled even before the knockout there. He was clearly losing round 2 before he got finished. He's obviously had trouble with his weight before, so whether or not he makes weight, it's going to be kind of a bit of a question here. So I think Martinez is a talented guy. I don't know how seriously he takes it, and I don't really know what to make of him yet. With that said, I mean, I think he's got Perez from a straight skill perspective, massively outclassed here. I think he's a much better striker. I don't think it would be very easy for Perez to have a ton of grappling success in this fight, if I'm being completely honest. There's a part of me that thinks the line is probably not wide enough. At the minus 220 it's at. I considered playing Martinez. I just, in a bantamweight striking fight against a weasel like Alejandro Perez, who's basically made a career out of making fights ugly and close, do I want to lay 220 on a guy who I'm not even sure if he's going to make weight or not yet? Not really. I'm passing, but I do think Martinez should clean him out without too much difficulty. Lags, what are your thoughts?
So I don't know if you actually saw earlier today. They actually moved the fight to featherweight.
Yeah, right. Okay, so yes.
So, but they actually did mention that the Perez is the one that requested the cut. So he's the one that's having the top cut. So
interesting.
Just to factor that in. I mean, I don't really have anything to disagree with what you said. I do think that Martinez is the better striker, probably keeps us standing. I guess my only red flags on Martinez in general, the volume's not great, and he's just kind of defensively void at times. I don't really think Perez can really capitalize on it here, but I don't know. It's just like a pass fight. I think this probably it's like one of those trap under type of spots. This probably goes over. It's just one of those fights you want to pass on. I think.
Luke, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's probably out of the weirdest kind of funky, shitty, low-level card one I think I have a decent read on. I think it's a great spot for Martinez, to be honest. Perez, slow-paced, kind of lip-of-the-pocket type of boxer. Yeah. He's going to mix in kicks, but a guy in Martinez not going to give him that kind of game. And a guy who's going to have a 5-inch reach edge. He fights at range well. Guy went out there in 30-27, Thomas Almeida. People want to say what they want to about Thomas Almeida in 2022. I get it. But that's still impressive to me. Davey Grant drops him in the first round despite getting clipped. He's had some poor defensive tendencies at times, but I still think he defends strikes at distance at about 59%, which is still pretty decent. And Perez isn't a guy who's going to go out there and put it on anybody. He needs these tepid, lip of the pocket type of base fights to really succeed. And even in these fights that he's winning, despite his record being great, they're not by significant margins, and they're not by, against good strikers. Every single guy that Alejandro Perez has beat is out of the UFC right now, which I think really needs to be noted. I think it's a solid spot for Martinez if he doesn't get, too overzealous, doesn't get clipped with a big hook. We've seen some quickness from Perez here and there, but to your points with the ground, both guys aren't really willing to wrestle. We've seen Martinez struggle on bottom at points, but Perez isn't really a proactive wrestler. I think he lands 0.6 takedowns per 15 minutes or something like that. So I don't have much concern there. I just think that Martinez's activity has been much more proven. He's much more battle tested, in my opinion, actually against better strikers, where we saw what had happened when Perez fought actually a legit UFC striker in Song. He got killed in 2 seconds. So I don't know. I think the line's not wide enough. I honestly think Martinez is 75, 80% in this fight.
Yeah, I think that's a completely reasonable take, to be honest with you. Moving on, though, we got an electric one. It's a rebooking. It's Terrence McKinney. It's Perez Ziam. Lags, what are your thoughts?
I love the under here. Under 2.5 rounds, minus 125. Got a unit and a half on that. McKinney's never seen a third round once in his career. I mean, I largely think that this is a good spot for him to get that early finish. I just kind of think that he can probably bully Ziam in the clinch, get him to the ground, and find a finish on the mat. But I mean, as always, if this fight gets later extended, the questions are going to be huge cardio for McKinney. But yeah, I mean, I like violence here. I think that Ziam probably could finish him late, but it's just like I don't have super strong takes there. I think largely that McKinney's going to be able to get it done early.
Yeah, fair. Luke, what are your thoughts?
High variable fight for a lot of ways. I mean, we still don't 100% know what to make of McKinney given the limited sample. But I actually do think he has, the wrestling and grappling background to extend this fight, in my opinion, because we have seen Ziam struggle consistently on bottom. It's just that because the guy's been kind of a quasi meme and killing people early, that I think people don't understand that the guy can actually wrestle and grapple. And I think he 100% can. It's just whether he actually does. And is that the path he takes? I do think that Ziam showed better concepts of takedown defense in his hips in his most recent fight. I think it was against Vendramini, but he also did get dinged later in the third round of that fight. And so that showed that, the guy isn't completely invincible. In my opinion, I actually thought that should have been a 10-8 round and the fight should have been a draw. I thought he lost the fight to Jamie Malarkey, in my opinion, too. So I think there's multiple paths for Terrence McKinney in this fight. It's just not a lot of footage, out there to say that the guy can go out there and win extended range exchanges. Can he wrestle, over the course of 15 minutes? It's hard to say, but I do think like on paper, he does have paths to finish via both methods. And I do think he has a path to actually win a decision. And that's my Eddie Bravo, tinfoil hat take for this fight is I actually think Terrence McKinney wins a decision in this fight via wrestling.
Yeah, McKinney's an interesting guy, to be honest. I actually, the first time this was booked, I had a bet on Perez Ziam at plus 115, just because, I'm kind of willing to fade guys who haven't fought outside the first round against serious competition with the UFC vet. Well, semi-vet, I guess, but a guy with multiple UFC fights. But, the line's obviously flipped now, and I have no interest in playing juice on Perez Ziam. McKinney's an interesting guy, though. He's obviously a great athlete. He hits pretty hard. He's, to both your points, he's a very good wrestler. It's just, my questions with him are, one, does he have, beyond like one-shot kill power, does he have any kind of coherent striking game? We don't really know, we really have no idea. It's possible he's going to come out there and look like some elite striker the first time he gets extended. I strongly doubt that's the case, but it is possible. We really have no idea. And in the wrestling, look, he is a very good wrestler. I just question about his cardio. Even if you go back and watch the Sean Woodson fight, he obviously looked very good early in that fight. But round two, I know he got caught by a flying knee, but his takedowns were becoming a lot more labored. His entries were becoming lazy. He wasn't getting in on the hips nearly as quickly. And that's usually a sign of poor cardio. Now, maybe he's cleaned that up. Maybe it was a one-off. Maybe I'm just misreading that. I don't really know. To Luke's point, I think it's a very high variance fight that I don't really have. The only thing I have faith in is I know Perez Ziam is a very good boxer, and if McKinney slows down here, he's probably going to point him up with relative ease. But McKinney's enough of an athlete and has enough skills that I know exist that I'm not really dying to lay juice against him. I think it's interesting. I guess I'd lean towards the under. My big fear with it, and the reason I'm not betting it, is just like, what happens if it's just like gassed out Terrence McKinney, like landing takedowns and trying to lay and pray and do the malarkey, because that seems like it's something that could happen in this fight down the stretch. But McKinney should, if he fights to his strengths, initiate a brawl. So we'll see what happens. But this is actually probably one of the better fights on the entire card, to be honest. Speaking of electric fights, we got Josiane Nunes taking on Ramona Pasquale. Luke, what do you got here? Anything?
Not a whole lot. We got Joseph Benavidez coming back, at 145 pounds. No, all I'm going to say is there's not much to say with Pasquale. You know, moved out to Vegas recent year. You know, she looks decent in her recent fights over low level girls, but I went back and watched some of her stuff from 2017. It does not look, you know, overtly pretty at all. But this fight is at 145 pounds and Nunes is 5'2". I think that needs to be noted. You know, you're not going to see a 5'2" girl at 145 pounds every single day. She's a Walmart version of Jessica Andrade who's going to come forward and just sling bombs, which, you know, you like from a low level for a lot of reasons for sure. But she's also gotten stuck on bottom too. I think Pasquale may have grappling advantages in this fight. I think she has clinch advantages in this fight. I think she has size advantages in this fight, but her defense sucks. Her range striking sucks too. So once again, I think there's a lot of variance there. And to me, it comes down to where the Pasquale girl is at in 2022, which I have absolutely no idea, which is why I can't bet the fight. Because I can easily see Nunes coming forward and absolutely blasting this girl. But I could see a finish too on the Pasquale side. It's gun to my head. I would take the dog, to be honest, because it wasn't that long ago where Nunes was a dog to Bahamondes. I think that also needs to be noted. And she killed that girl who's about to now retire. So it's just kind of funny how these things move. Honestly, I would generally take like an under-based approach, but it's like, I think it's like minus 200. The fight doesn't go the distance. It's like, okay, I'm not really interested.
It's a women's fight, dude.
Yeah,
it is still a women's fight. So if it was closer to evens or plus money, but minus 200, massive pass for me. But gun to my head, I'd take the flyer on Pasquale.
I'll be honest, I haven't bet it. I probably won't bet it. I may look for a live spot. I have a feeling, I'm not making a prediction. I'm just saying I have a feeling that Pasquale is going to kick the shit out of her. It's just like, I just like, dude, I remember taping it. I bet Bahamondes. I mean, which obviously was awful, but like, I felt confident enough to wager multiple hundreds of dollars on Bahamondes as a favorite in the UFC against Josiane Nunes. Like that should speak volumes about what her tape is like and what her regional tape is like, you know? I don't think even in the Malecki fight, what I give her credit for is she is the kind of fighter who will let her hands fly. She's aggressive. She's very, very, very aggressive. Obviously for WMA, she hits hard, but like I've said it before, but regional KOs, men's or women's, are not very predictive of KOs in the UFC. Obviously, she KO'd Bahamondes, but like Malecki has no defense or concept of how to use reach or control range at all. You know, she was tagging her whenever she wanted. I do think she hits hard for a female fighter. No question. I'm just saying, I don't think the likelihood of a KO is up at 50 or 60% by any means. And I do kind of think Pasquale's tape is pretty bad, to be honest, but she is thick and she is bigger and she is a Thai-based fighter who likes to use the clinch. And I kind of think if she gets through the first couple minutes here, it likely just turns into either her hitting takedowns and getting on top of Josiane Nunes or just beating her up in the clinch. Like Nunes' tape regionally, every time she came out of round one, she gassed the fuck out badly, you know? And if she gasses out against a girl who's going to just basically bring the kind of the game plan's going to wear you out, I kind of think she gets broken. You know, I agree that she is not UFC level. You will not find a disagreement from me. I just feel fairly certain skill-wise Josiane Nunes is not UFC level either. Yeah. Again, I'm not betting a money line pre-fight. I am looking, though, because I do think Nunes probably looks good in the early portion of this fight, but I don't think I know she can't keep the pace that she brought last fight for 15 minutes. And I really do think if it gets out of round one, she's going to get beaten up. My guts, Pasquale is going to win this fight, but I'm not. Again, I can't it's hard to quantify a number with how little data there is on Pasquale, right? So, Lags, what are your thoughts?
I think what Luke said for the first fight of the night, you know, why is this fight happening? I kind of feel the same way for this one. I really, I second that as well. what Rick said. But honestly, like I come out of tape, I'm thinking, you know what, Nunes probably KOs this girl in the first round. Like I think her defense is just so suspect, it's just so bad. Like this is just a regional level fight that is just brought to the UFC. And like, I don't get me wrong, I agree with you with the overs. The over 1.5 is like -110 for this fight. But it's like, it's also so low level that it's like maybe she could just KO her, like similar to a regional level fight, because this is regional level competition. I mean, don't get me.
There's always that John point.
Don't get me wrong. Like, I think the over, if anything, is the play here, but it's also like Pasquale is also like similar competition to that of Nunes's regional tape. So it's like, I don't know. It's just a pass for me.
Dude, and Bay just brought. I mean, honestly,
yeah.
The line is a 1.5 for WMMA. Like, shouldn't we just hit this over just on? Although I will say, once upon a time, we did bet an over 1.5 on a bad line in a Tisha Torres fight and got burned. Torch.
We don't want to talk about that. That didn't even happen. It's fake news, bro. That didn't happen. I don't know.
I think that's the last over W1.5 I can remember. Actually, Nunes, I guess, is 1.5 in every fight. But other than her, right? Anyway, that fight didn't happen, like you guys said. We'll move on.
Yeah.
We have
can we get a quick shout out though for that blood diamond under 2.5 though?
That was nice.
I know. Thank God. That was nice. That line correction actually happened.
Goddamn casino quick enough flags.
Sorry. We had another one today too.
I missed the one today, unfortunately. I didn't realize it was on FanDuel. But anyway, we move on. We got Ignacio Bahamondes. He's taking on Zhu Rong. I think this is an interesting fight, a weird fight. I've obviously faded Bahamondes in both of his first 2 UFC fights. Was right once, was wrong badly the second time. I think Zhu Rong is terrible, if I'm being honest. Like, from a skill perspective, I obviously faded him in his first fight in the UFC. I don't really think he's a great grappler. It's interesting because coming in before I went to tape it, I was like, maybe Rong grappled Brendan Jenkins. Maybe he can just out grapple Bahamondes. But his wrestling's really bad. I really, if Roberts couldn't get him down, I really don't think Rong is going to have much success grappling him. And in terms of volume and how they fight minute to minute, obviously Bahamondes is a monster volume striker. I don't really rate Bahamondes' game a whole lot, but he throws a ton of volume and he hits relatively hard. And so he should be able to cruise on minutes. The thing is, though, and what I will say is I don't think Rong is just going to let Bahamondes do Bahamondes things without throwing back at him. And what I will say about Rong is I do think he hits reasonably hard. And so and Bahamondes got hurt by a jab against John McDessie, the guy he stops punches with his face. So if this is a fight that's going to turn into a war, I almost think Rong would have to be the side if that's the case, just because Rong hits hard. And if 2 guys are going to both just eat bombs and swing in the center, I'm going to take the guy who's plus 180. But with that being said, I don't really have a lot of passion behind it. I do think Bahamondes is the better fighter. I think his volume is more reliable. If he doesn't get KO'd, I feel like he wins this fight at a very large clip. I just don't really know what the likelihood of him getting KO'd is. I don't hate a Zhu Rong stab here, to be honest, because he does have grappling upside, even though I don't think it's likely. And this is the real question of the fight, what Bay is saying. Pink hair Zhu Rong. Are there superpowers attached to it? Is this his version of Super Saiyan Rong? We're gonna find out. Lags, what are your thoughts?
I was gonna say, is this Blonde Brunson? Is this pink? is this pink Zhu Rong?
Pink Rong.
Pink Rong. No, I mean, I think you touched on it. I mean, what I was gonna touch on as well. I mean, the volume of Bahamondes and then the poor grappling of Zhu Rong. That just kind of, just for me, it's just one of those dogs that's a trap by the numbers type of thing. He's got the grappling upside, but it's also how much grappling upside is he actually going to have type of thing. So, yeah, I like Bahamondes by decision.
Luke, I'm here.
Yeah, weird fight because I thought I would be taking the shot on Rong, and after going into it, after going back into it, I'm like, not really. Honestly, I mean, I took a flyer on Brennan Jenkins against the guy, if that says anything, to be completely honest. And then based on that, obviously throw my bet outside, but based on the performance, now the guy's a fucking superstar and he's the dog of the week. And it's well, I mean, even going into that fight, we knew that Brennan Jenkins couldn't stuff takedowns really ever. He took that on I think less than a week or so notice.
4 days
blocks
notice.
Punches with his face, so he lands 8 or so takedowns on Brandon Jenkins now that Rong is this fucking great wrestler. It's like, not really. And then you go back to the fight he had with our homeboy Mexican dude, goes 3 for 4 on takedowns, but 2 of those, I think one was a caught kick, another one was like a slip or whatever, a pulled guillotine. So it's like, I'm sorry, I'm not like a Bahamondes truther here by any means, but people like are acting like this Wrong guy's like this great wrestler now, in my opinion, is just a stupid narrative. And what I have seen from at least Bahamondes, obviously got ran on the mat like in 2016, 2017, got subbed, the shitty guy on the contender series attempted 5 takedowns or whatever. I take nothing with it, but Roosevelt Roberts attempted 12 takedowns. You can say what you want about Roberts, but I do rate him actually as a better wrestler grappler than Wrong personally.
Yeah.
Bahamondes looked on there. I thought he showed good hips, digging a wide base, digging underhooks. So this narrative that like Wrong comes out here and wrestles and Bahamondes just goes down, I think is kind of bullshit, to be completely honest. I think the guy's this overrated wrestler that people are hyping him up to be based on the Jenkins performance. But the problem that I have with Bahamondes, that we've all had with Bahamondes, which is why we all bet John Makdessi at plus 300, plus 200 against him, is that despite his reach, doesn't use it effectively. He's got that Maurice Green syndrome, that Luis Pena syndrome. The guy blocks punches with his face, hasn't figured out how to use his reach effectively. But at the same time, the problem I've had with Wrong is that people look at the volume numbers associated with his fight with Brandon Jenkins. Half of those strikes also came on the ground, though. He also got 2x'd on strikes by fucking, homeboy in his debut who sucks. In my opinion, is probably not going to be in the UFC for very long. We've also seen similar patterns on the regional scene where, yes, he will be high output, but other times he will be low output. So I've seen just everything all over the board for Wrong, and I think he's just getting so much dog love in this spot, as if he's going to just run Bahamondes on the ground, if he's just going to throw 300 strikes on the feet. It's like, I don't really get it. I mean, he could, but it's not like there's this consistent trajectory from both capacities that he's going to go out there and do that. I think Bahamondes kind of pieces him on the feet. I don't really think Wrong lands takedowns. If Wrong just bites the mouthpiece and throws a ton of strikes, I can definitely see him making this fight more competitive based on the defensive issues for Bahamondes. So I'm not saying, lay, all your money on Bahamondes by any means at all, but I think Bahamondes wins a volume-based decision pretty clearly, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think the lesson is, if you're looking to fade both of these guys, maybe don't take a stand in the fight. Or that's my lesson anyway.
Yeah. It's a good lesson. It's a good lesson to be had.
But I love the breakdown, Luke. Moving on, we got a banger here. We got RoboCop, Gregory Rodriguez. He's coming back. He's taking on Armin Petrosyan. Lags, what are your thoughts here?
I think this is one of the best fights on the card, outside of obviously the main event and the Armin and Alvarez fight. I think this is one of the best fights on the card. And I like violence here, to be honest. I like the under 1.5. I haven't made a play on it yet, but I think that Petrosyan is win conditioned largely to an early KO here. But I think that Rodriguez has grappling success, can have grappling success here. But it's also like he's hittable on the feet, but these guys are also going to throw leather on the feet. So I just kind of think that both have finishing potential on the feet, and Rodriguez has that grappling potential early as well. So I like the under 1.5 here.
Luke, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think you can make a solid argument for both guys. I think if Rodriguez comes out here and puts on his singlet, because he is the much better grappler also in the fight, I think he can look probably minus 400 in the fight. The problem is he's not necessarily the guy to dive on legs for 15 minutes. That's where we've seen Petrosyan struggle historically. Obviously he hasn't gotten submitted, but he's fighting kind of more these grinding Russian-based wrestler archetypes who aren't really trying to put in hooks or really dig anything, but guys have gotten to back ride on him in multiple fights. And if you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but this is just my opinion. If Rodriguez is able to get to those positions on this dude, he's going to fucking sell them. Like he's going to sub him.
Or
It just
pound him
comes
out on
down
the
to
mat.
whether he's going to pursue that route or not is really the question, in my opinion. If they stand, I actually think that Rodriguez is the best striker that Petrosyan has fought to date, but also I think Rodriguez is a guy who needs to succeed in kind of the primary closer range boxing based scenarios where Petrosyan's kind of more your outside sniper based kickboxer. And Rodriguez kind of stands pretty upright. We've seen him knocked out by a pretty small 185 in Jordan Williams. We saw Junior Park, who is not a big guy at the weight class at all, hurt him multiple times in that fight, actually pretty badly, where he was still able to rally and finish, at least in the Rodriguez side. But the point being, guy's defense isn't picture perfect by any means. And I think that that outside archetype of Petrosyan can actually give Rodriguez some significant issues in this fight. So I think it's another one you can go multiple ways. It's like if Rodriguez is not going to sit there and grapple and he's going to sit there and have a 15-minute kickboxing match with this fight, is Rodriguez minus 150 in that? Maybe, but maybe not. Like he very well could not be. And I think Petrosyan has favored upside in that scenario potentially. But I think the path to least resistance, wrestle, take this dude down, get to his back, sub him. He's a BJJ black belt. That's actually his base. Despite him sitting there boxing with everybody historically, he's actually a grappler, black belt by nature. I think that's where the levels in the fight are the biggest, and that's what he should do. So to me, it comes down to fight IQ, what the guy wants to do. To Lags' point, do I really want to lay 150 on Rodriguez? No. Could you make an argument he should be minus 400? Yes. Do I really want to lay, minus 135, or I'm sorry, plus 135 on the other dude? You could make an argument he's plus 300. Sure. I kind of would rather just go with the under 1.5 route if I was to do anything, or parlay up the fight doesn't go the distance.
Yeah, it's an interesting fight. To be honest, I'm probably going to end up laying Rodriguez. It makes me deeply uncomfortable, as I mentioned to you guys before we went live, for a number of reasons that you touched on, Luke. But I do think skill-wise, he's got Petrosyan pretty well covered here. I personally think he's the more technical striker. He's probably got as much power as Petrosyan, to be honest with you. And like Luke touched on the grappling, it's something interesting. Like most of the guys that Petrosyan's fought have grappled him are the classic, like what you see from American wrestlers and from most of the Russians, which is they will wrestle you, but they don't really they don't really do much to control you. They kind of just end up wrestle riding you, which allows you to do what Petrosyan does, which is work up to a tripod, get taken back down, and do that again until they die and he knocks them out. The difference between, like, let's take Russians, like, what makes guys like Islam and Khabib so special is they've blended jiu-jitsu and they'll put in hooks. Well, now we have a guy, an actual jiu-jitsu expert in Rodriguez, who's a super high-level guy, who actually is a pretty good wrestler. And like Luke said, I honestly think if Rod wants to, he gets him down and he gets his back with very little issue, to be honest. And I think if he gets his back, you're not going to see Petrosyan tripoding up. You're going to see Rodriguez getting a body triangle and likely either smashing him with ground and pound or subbing him. But I will say this. What makes me nervous is we saw how good Rod's grappling was in the Park fight. And what happened when he came out for round 2? He was shot to shit. He won that fight. And that, by the way, if you haven't watched that fight or you don't remember it, go watch it. It's one of the fucking wildest fights of, like, the year last year.
It's a banger.
It is a banger. But, like, he went from looking minus 1,000 in round 1 to going utterly life and death and looking dead on the fence. And so, like, I'm a little worried. Luke's like, take the path of least resistance. And in my head, I'm like, yeah, probably. I'm like, if I put money on him minus 150 and he comes out for round 2 and can't lift his hands above his chest, I'm going to cry, But honestly, though, like, he's got double the experience that this dude does. This guy's fought mostly bums. He hasn't seen any jiu-jitsu like this. He hasn't seen a striker like this. It's one of those spots where I kind of feel like, as nervous as it makes me, I kind of got to grit and bear it and say, okay, I'm getting 60% implied on a guy who's just massively better skill-wise. I kind of have to do it. But it does make me nervous. But I don't want to say I think Petrosyan's a fraud, but I do think his record and his Tapology score showing so many knockouts kind of overstates what he actually brings to the table skill-wise here. So yeah, I like Rodriguez here. Lags, you broke this down already, right?
Yep.
So moving on, we got a good one. We got Armin Tsarukyan. He's taking on Joel Alvarez, El Fenomeno, which I believe means in Spanish, the freak. I've seen a lot of Joel Alvarez.
I thought it was the phenomenal. No?
Is it? Is that what it means?
I thought it was El Fenomeno. No? I thought it was El Fenomeno.
You could be right. It's
John's like, who gives a shit? Fuck
not
this
Spanish,
guy.
even though I look it, but
yes.
I'll be honest, guys. I've seen a lot of Joel Alvarez love this week, and it boggles the mind. And this is, by the way, I know some sharp people who are betting Joel Alvarez, and are like,
you should say, you mean it lights the campfire, John.
That's it.
Yeah,
I'm lighting the campfire here. That are saying Bobby Green has no chance, and they're betting Joel Alvarez. I do not know what fucking world you have to live in to be like, okay, let's look at those two fights, and obviously we'll break down the Green fight a bit later on. It's like, in one fight, we have a guy who's actually remarkably defensively good on the feet, who also is an excellent scrambler and defensive grappler. In the other fight, you have a guy who has no defense on the feet, has not defended a single takedown successfully in the UFC, and can't get off his back. And yet people are backing the guy who can't get off his fucking back against that Russian wrestler. You know, like what world am I living in here? And honestly, look, I get it. People are like, oh man, Joel Alvarez's guard, it's so fucking nasty. And it's like, is it though? Is it? Danilo Belluardo got over a round of control time against Joel Alvarez. He got to be swept with a Dagestani handcuff. If you think he's grabbing Armin fucking Tsarukyan and sweeping him with a Dagestani handcuff, you are out of your fucking mind. I'm not saying he can't sweep him, but I do think the chances of him sweeping Tsarukyan are fairly unlikely. I mean, just looking at this fight, my biggest concern on the Armin side of things is that he's going to let coaches or somebody get to his head and be like, oh, you don't want to play around in his guard here. But honestly, standing, I favor Armin by a decent margin. The only real fear for me there is the size. And in the grappling, look, he's like half a tier below Islam as a grappler. You know, he is a serious fucking wrestler. He's going to get him down with ease, and I don't really think he's going to have any issues on top of him. Like, you go back and watch the Davi Ramos fight. If you put Davi Ramos in there in a grappling match with Armin Tsarukyan, Ramos would literally tear his fucking head off. Okay, like Davi Ramos is like one of the best jiu-jitsu guys to ever do it, and Armin was in his guard for 3.5 minutes with zero issues whatsoever. I get it. You know, Joel is long, but I don't really this is probably what's going to happen. But but I really, really don't. You say, what about Jago? Jago's is a better grappler than Joel Alvarez is. Like, this is what I'm getting at. No one seems to realize it. Like, the guys who Armin has fought, like, if Matt Frevola fought Joel Alvarez tomorrow, I don't think Matt Frevola would out-grapple Joel Alvarez. He is a one-trick. He is basically the Jalija Stoliarenko of men's MMA, okay? Like, that is what he is. I'm telling you. He is, yes, he's tall and he's long, but the guy is an armbar specialist who the rest of his bottom game is blue belt level. Like, that is what I am telling you here. If Armin passes into half guard, he is going nowhere. He is getting stuck on bottom here. Like I said, my biggest concern is Armin is just going to be like, oh, man, I can't go into that dangerous guard and sit back at distance and get cracked. But I think he's better there, and honestly, what I think is going to happen is he's just going to take him down 3 times and dominate him. I think it's far more likely that Armin subs Joel than the other way around, to be completely honest with you. I think minus 220 on Armin is nuts. I think it should be more like minus 500. I'm going to bet Armin here. It seems like people are still betting Joel and the line's still coming in, so I'm waiting. But I cannot really recall a grappling edge this wide with a line this short, to be honest. Like ever, really. So I love Armin in this spot. I think it's an easy bet. I'm fading Joel this week. What do you think, lads?
Yep. Similarly to you, I jumped in already because I think we kind of reached like the kind of the valley, I would say. So I got a unit and a half on Armin at minus 210, and also DraftKings has a solid prop. They have Armin in the over 1.5 rounds at plus 110. So I have that for a unit and a half as well. Yeah, I mean, this is essentially guard sub or bust for Joel Alvarez, to be honest with you. Like, on the feet, like, yeah, he could, land a knee or elbow here or there, but like, I just don't really see it, to be honest. Like, I think that this, like you said, this should be minus 350, minus 400. Like, this is a solid grappling edge against the guy who has no get up game, who has nothing really off of his back, doesn't have any cardio. Like, I talked about this in our chat. I honestly think that you could cash the Armin money line, the Armin and the over 1.5 rounds, and the Armin round 3 decision, because I think that Armin round 3 is live. I think him winning a decision is live. So I love Armin in the spot.
Luke, what do you think?
I'm on Armin by points here at plus 190. Line doesn't make a ton of sense to me.
Yeah.
I laid Moises pretty heavy against Alvarez in the last outing, which obviously looks pretty terrible hindsight. But bringing it all full circle, I'm not really willing to say that this guy is this striking savant. After 3 minutes of beating the shit out of Thiago Moises, who attempted, might I add, 0 takedowns in that fight at all, which I thought was also pretty interesting, even though you're getting pieced on the feet. And so that's also my point here too, is that let's say that my take on the striking here is wrong, that I don't think, or I should say that I think Tsarukyan can manage distance largely pretty effectively, be the more effective guy, kind of win on points that way on the feet. Let's say I'm wrong there, and that we see a similar scenario to the Moises fight where he's coming out, he's just blasting the dude, hitting him with a ton of shots. One thing I feel good about saying is that if that scenario does happen, Armin's gonna fucking shoot takedowns. He's going to shoot takedowns, and he's actually a much better wrestler than Thiago Moises, might I add, too. So, and John brought up the point, the guy spent 3.5 minutes in the guard of Davi Ramos, who's an ADCC champion. And you go back to that Danilo Belluardo fight, dude, Homeboy's guard got passed like without much ease, and he got controlled, I think, for I'd say probably 80% of that fight. And then obviously got swept and got pounded out. But people act like there's this mass. I don't get it with Alvarez, in my opinion. I don't get it. We have such a small sample of him at distance, right? So to just say, okay, based on 3 minutes against Moises, this guy's this phenomenal striker. It's like, okay. I mean, if you want to make that conclusion, fair, but that's based on almost nothing. So say that for what you will. Is he going to wrestle Tsarukyan? No, because he can't fucking wrestle. Is he going to defend takedowns from Tsarukyan? Well, no, the guy stuffs takedowns at 53% and actually accepts
0%. At 0%. He stuffs takedowns at 0%.
Pretty much, essentially. So I don't really see what the issue is here for Tsarukyan personally. Like I said, worst case scenario, the guy's a better striker than I'm giving him credit for. He comes out here and starts putting it on Armin. Armin just takes him down. I think Joel is a good enough grappler that he can be positionally responsible on the ground, and he's not going to get finished on the floor. Personally, I know maybe a couple of you boys might disagree with me there, but I do think he's good enough on the ground, which is why I took the plus 190 on the decision. But I just think it's a great way to buy down on the guy, because I think his decision being like plus 190, his inside the distance is plus 165. That doesn't make really any sense to me at all. I think that should be much more lopsided towards the decision. I think actually the decision for Armin should be favorite money, personally.
Yeah, and like one other thing, when you look at the Moises fight, I know, look, I'll give Alvarez credit for going forward that aggressively, but I think the Alexander Hernandez fight kind of lured people thinking into Moises as something he's not. Like, if you go back through his whole career, you watch him when he fought Robert Watley regionally. Watley went forward on him. He basically just didn't strike the entire fight. The Michael Johnson fight, Johnson went forward. He basically was happy to go back to the fence, shell up. Whenever Holloway went at him, the exact same thing. Anytime in this guy's career, guys have put forward pressure on him, he is just not comfortable. And Alvarez did it. He didn't shoot. He basically shelled up, and Alvarez finished him. There's no reason to think that's going to happen. And look, if he comes out here and he starts working up out of takedowns immediately, I will come out here and I will say on next Wednesday, I'm a fucking idiot and I was wrong about Joel Alvarez. I really don't think that's going to happen, though. I feel like I have a pretty good read here that he's going to get fucking washed. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Moving on, we have another banger here. We got Priscilla Cachoeira. She's taking on Ji Young Kim. Lags, what are your thoughts here?
This is exactly like what you just said. This is absolutely going to be a banger, because I think both of these girls lack pretty much any kind of defense, and I think these girls are just going to throw heat. And I guess The only reason that I don't think that Kim should be like this big of a favorite, I should say, is that I don't really rate her footwork that well. I don't think her footwork's that great. I don't think her speed in general, like striking, is all that great. So like I think it could be a decent fight for Priscilla in the sense that like I think she can keep up on volume. I think that obviously there's going to be chances for her to land a knockout. But yeah, I just think it's going to be an awesome fight to watch and kick back and chill.
Luke, what are your thoughts?
Low level fight again. So, you got your variance here. And this is, it's so weird. Out of all these fights on the card, this is probably one of the ones I actually did one of the deeper dives into because I was trying to just like figure out something or an angle.
Unreal. Luke the women's MMA whisperer.
With my time and my own, mental status, but there's merit to Cachoeira. Gun to my head, I would probably take Cachoeira, and I would actually probably take her by points at like plus 250 here, based on the fact that I think that Kim is retardedly durable. She's going to block punches with her face, but we've seen her take some shots. Cachoeira is going to come forward, but I am picking Kim in the sense because I do think she has a good reach advantage in this matchup. Not that it's going to help her defensively because it never has, but my thing is actually going back and doing the ridiculous deep dive I did into this. Molly kind of crashed the pocket on Kim and, kind of won based on forward pressure and optics. So people say Cachoeira is going to be the one going forward. She's going to sling heat. Therefore, she's going to win on optics. Therefore, she's the value side. She very well could be. That could very well be a rinse and repeat type of scenario. But my thing is that Cachoeira doesn't set anything up. She throws no straight punches. It's all hooks. It's all overhands. She's not slow. She can't cut off the cage. She has no footwork. So it's, in my opinion, if we're going to take that comparison to Molly, who also kind of implemented a similar game plan, but the thing with Molly is she's faster. She sets things up. She's a bit quicker. She cuts off the cage much better. So I think that's the difference between the two, in my opinion, which is why I think Kim will win a striking-based decision, but it's not a confident take in any stretch of the imagination. I'm actually very interested in the over here because I think it's sitting at like minus 180. People look at these girls, they're going to sit there and sling bombs with no defense. How can you bet the over? It's like, why not? Both are incredibly tough. I mean, Cachoeira, she got kicked in the head by Carolina, but she recovered from that. She got her ass beat on the ground by Shevchenko for like, I think 10 minutes before eventually getting fucking finished. Kim killed Nadia Kassem, who's in like a fucking, dance shit over in fucking whatever, doing drugs now. Who gives a shit about that? I think it's just going to be a high action fight. Both girls are going to swing. Nobody's going to go out. I kind of like the over at minus 180.
You know what we say, Luke? When they zig, we zag. I don't hate the overplay. I don't hate it at all. Honestly, though, I'm like, it's so weird because I'm so tempted to bet Cachoeira. Like, legitimately, like one of my worst bets of all time was betting Ji-Yeon Kim at plus 260 against Alexa Grasso. Like, holy fuck, after watching that. It didn't seem horrible at the time. I was like, oh, women's striking fight, big favorite. But then watching Molly McCann walk her down last fight, I'm like, oh my God. I thought she was going to beat Alexa Grasso. What? I don't know. I used to rate Kim a decent amount because, statistically, she keeps a pretty high output. She seems to be reasonably technical. But, man, like, she just has not – I mean, she hasn't looked good since the Kassem fight. And to your point, Luke, Nadia Kassem, beating her and finishing her is really kind of a meaningless outcome in the grand scheme of things. I just – the issue I have is, look, Catch does some things I like. She throws hard. She throws a lot. She goes forward constantly. The problem is it really isn't that hard to just beat Catch. Like, if you just jab and slide off the center line, you're going to beat Priscilla Cachoeira. It's really, like, not that difficult, I laid Jillian, and that was a little sweatier than I wanted it to be, but the girl can't grapple. Like, that's just the reality. Gina Mazzani took her down 7 times before she gassed out in that fight. Not that I think Kim's going to come out here with a grappling heavy game plan, but maybe she will. Cachoeira just has so many weaknesses that make me nervous about laying her that it's like I feel like a reasonable UFC talent, which like I'm very down on Kim, but I think she is a UFC level talent. Like a reasonable UFC level talent with a game plan pretty much has every tool they need to beat her as long as they fight intelligently and don't get clipped. Um, so I don't know. It's like I'm tempted to bet Cachoeira just because output plus cardio plus pace plus pressure is a pretty good combination here. There's just so many flaws in her game though, and it's like if this fight happens and it's just Kim 1-2 move 1-2 move for 15 minutes, like I won't be shocked at all. You know, like Luke touched on, Luana Carolina beat her pretty badly, and like I don't rate Carolina that highly. I probably put her on a similar level as Kim. So I'm passing it. I don't mind the over either. I'd be shocked if she put Kim out, to be honest. I kind of think she's probably getting a little too much credit for KOing Shanna Dobson and KOing a death gas Gina Mazzani who just flat out quit in the octagon against her. I like the
You
over.
have no durability too.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Gina got finished, 4 times in her 7 fights? Something like that? Yeah. So, I guess
to add on to your guys, I'm looking at the lines right now on Best Fight Odds. FanDuel has the fight goes the distance at -146.
That's not bad. I honestly might hit that.
I'm gonna fucking play it. I don't care.
Yeah.
I think that's stupid. I think
looks like guys, can we postpone for a half hour and run to the casino right now? Lags, what are your thoughts on the fight?
I give the thoughts on the fight.
Did you?
Yep, first. Yep.
I'm fucking retarded.
That's all right. It's all right. I know you're dumpster diving here, John.
It's all the hard seltzers.
That's all.
Moving on, we got Misha Cirkunov, second fight at 185, coming off a split loss to Christoph Jocko. He's taking on Wellington Turman. Luke, what do you think here?
Yeah, no real strong opinion here again. I mean, it's two guys I think that are very untrustworthy. I've seen some Cirkunov bets, and I get it from some perspective because I do think he should be rightfully Luke is in tears at the goalie fights. You're goddamn right. You know, I think Hannah had a bit of a tough session on her OnlyFans the other night, so I think we got to give her a bit of a break. So, you know, there we go. Nonetheless, Cirkunov Turman. You can make arguments, I think, either way here. In my opinion, I think Cirkunov being a favorite makes sense because I think he has the higher grappling upside in the fight. It's still so hard for me to unsee the Turman fight with Carl Roberson in his debut, who is a kickboxer by nature, who, you know, reversed him 3 times, was able to get into dominant positions in that fight. Cirkunov, I think, is actually a really strong grappler at 205, but he's also just had like a really weird career that I think the guy's career's, you know, spanned over 8 years, at least in the UFC, and he's got like less than an hour of octagon time. You know, his metrics look great. I think he's a strong wrestler, but back down at 185 pounds now for, I think, the second or third fight, just looked like fucking shit against Jocko, to be honest. Once again, I think that Jocko's takedown defense is really good. You look statistically, Turman's takedown defense is great at 100%, but Turman's only faced 5 TDAs in the UFC. So it's like, does he stuff takedowns from Cirkunov? I'm not really sure. How does he look on bottom there? I'm not really sure. But then again, in 2 of the UFC fights that Cirkunov has had that have hit the 3rd round, he's landed 41 and 44 significant strikes. So he's not a guy that you can anticipate to go out there and put a pace on someone over the course of 3 rounds, assuming a fight is extended. So if this gets extended, I think it's close. I mean, Turman's going to come forward. He's going to throw. We saw him essentially win the fight against Alvi based on optics. I think there's some of that here as well. And I just don't have really a great concept of the wrestling here. I don't want to say just because I think Cirkunov is the better wrestler grappler that he's just going to get takedowns here. I think he could, but I'm not sure because homeboy Turman just hasn't been proactively wrestled enough for me to like make a definitive statement there that that's the case. And if it's not, Cirkunov gasses, he looks like he did in the last fight. You get a close pitter-patter fight where he doesn't have much left, and Turman's just the guy doing more going forward. Turman's very live in this fight as well. And, you know, we've seen Cirkunov clipped, knocked out, hurt multiple times before too. Turman's been knocked out multiple times before too, against not the greatest of strikers. I think this is one of the higher variance spots on the card. I want absolutely nothing to do with this fight.
Yeah, when the fight got announced and the line came out, I was pretty interested in betting Cirkunov just because I'm fairly familiar with his game. Yeah, I've always rated his skill set. I bet him against Span. That obviously didn't work out very well. Look, I mean, I think we all know he's a bit fragile. And I think with Misha, it even goes beyond being fragile. I just don't think – I think when he gets hit hard, he just does not like it and doesn't want – not that anybody likes getting hit hard, but you know what I mean, where he just doesn't react well to being touched up. But look, I mean, here, based on the available data that we have, I'm inclined to think Misha is the more skilled fighter everywhere. I mean, the reality is, we just saw Turman have a fairly competitive fight with late-stage Sam Alvey, who is also fairly fragile at this point in his career and really just isn't the guy that he was, which wasn't that great in the beginning. Even though I've been willing to lose money on Sam Alvey on numerous occasions. I mean, just being honest here. I think in a vacuum, it's like I would favor Cirk against Turman a decent amount. The problem is I didn't like how he looked against Jocko. And again, I would make Jocko a fairly heavy favorite against Turman, if I'm being honest. But I thought he looked a little drained there. I thought his gas tank looked a bit questionable there. Yeah, I don't know. And like in the grappling, I'm with you, Luke. Like my gut is, I've seen Misha rip through guys who I would rate out as better grapplers than Turman, but we don't really, Turman's a strong kid. We don't really know what his takedown defense is like. The last thing I want is to end up having him raining ground and pound on Cirkunov, even though that hasn't been his MO, just knowing how Cirk is. And on top of that, I was leaning towards a play on Cirkunov, and I heard one of our friends told me who knew some people at Glover's gym. That's where he's been training full time since his last fight. Apparently, there are some rumblings that he's been making pretty significant improvements there. And Turman, whatever you want to say about him, he's young. He's like 24 years old. He's at the age where you could start seeing big improvements. And Misha, I kind of think he's a declining fighter to begin with. On top of which, he has never been the best nail in the world. And Turman is a guy who will be a hammer until you kill him or he kills you. He's not going to back away from a fight. That dynamic makes me nervous. I still kind of lean toward Turman here. I was looking at the under, but it's a fight where I don't think either guy cracks particularly hard. And so, it could be a low volume affair with a lot of clinch work on top of which two guys who don't hit hard. It's like, the under is basically a fade on their chins, but I won't be shocked if neither of them hurts the other. So I'm with you, Luke. I think it's a pass. I think Cirk should roll, but I think it's a pass. Lads, what about you?
Yeah, kind of similar to you. When I was going into tape, I was like, all right, I like Cirk, like the line and whatnot. But coming out, like watching the Jocko fighters, like his takedowns just look so telegraphed. Like the striking just looked very wooden. He just looked slow. Like it just didn't look like his former self. So it's just like, it's more one of those more like Luke says, just a high variance spot you just want to pass on. I think Cirkunov should roll in this spot. But like you said, I like the under. I think that's probably not a bad spot either, because I think Turman, if this goes late, Turman's just going to keep going forward and probably will be able to hit Cirkunov whenever he wants to. So
yeah,
not a bad spot.
Yeah, agreed. Moving on, we got the main event. We got Bobby King Green.
Yeah,
podcasts are fans of him. Making his first main event of his career here. He's taking on Islam Makhachev. Short notice. We got 160-pound catch weight. It's extremely exciting. It could be a boring fight, though. But I'm extremely amped for Bobby to get a main event spot. Thank you so much, Socrates. We appreciate it. Lads, take it away. What do you think about this fight?
Bobby's the GOAT, first of all, for taking this on short notice. Nobody else is going to do it. I got to play on Bobby here. 1 unit, plus 570. To be honest with you, I mean, you touched on it earlier in the night. Honestly, this is
that is maybe the message of the night.
Oh, Bobby Green.
That's good.
Bobby Green for sure. Not even a question. But I mean, to be honest with you, this is like one of the spots where it's like he's the most serviceable guy. Like all the skills that Bobby has, it's all what you want in a plus 600 kind of dog. He's got good scrambling ability, good takedown defense. He's got solid boxing. We just saw it in that last fight, kick Nasrat's ass for 3 rounds. And so to me, this is just more of your questions answered type of spot, because lining Islam at minus 1,000, you either think, okay, he's going to insta sub Bobby in the first round, which we haven't seen. I haven't really, seen that anytime soon. Or I think Islam would have to just do similar what he did in the Drew Dober fight and just control him on the mat, rinse and repeat for 25 minutes, which I also don't think is that likely too, because Bobby's got solid get-ups. So I just think it's one of those, Bobby gives a solid effort in this kind of fight. I just don't think that there's really any kind of realm where he plus 570 looks wide. Like, I think there's really no way you can go wrong with it, to be honest. So I like it. Bobby Green.
Luke?
All right, party pooper on the card.
Islam by decision. Boo.
I think you can make definitely a solid argument for Bobby at plus 5x, but after like going back into it, I think I would do it in a 3-round fight, but not a 5-round fight. In my opinion, I think Islam cooks him. To be completely honest, I think Bobby can make this scrappy early, but I would say that Islam can out wrestle anybody in the UFC at 155 pounds. I know Bobby's takedown defenses look great. He's been difficult to hold down. He's going to throw a lot of strikes. I get it. I just don't think it matters, to be completely honest. I think there's just levels in the wrestling and the grappling, and I think he's going to cook Bobby, and I think he's going to sub him on the feet. Once again, he's going to throw a lot of strikes, but I think Bobby also needs someone to sit there and stand in the pocket with him, which Islam is not going to do. He's going to fight at range. I think he does it effectively. He plays in that Russian co-space game well. So he's going to limit all that damage that's going to come from Bobby, and he's going to set up his takedowns, and he's going to go out there and get it done. So, John, kick me off the podcast. I like Islam, but actually from an actual betting perspective, what I will say, I like the alt total on the over 1.5 at minus 170, because I think, I really don't think that Islam just runs Bobby, in the early part of this fight. I do think Bobby's going to put up some resistance, but I think it's just one-way traffic after that as well. And I like Islam to get it done in 3 or 4.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a fascinating fight. It's weird. Look, Islam is fucking awesome. I'm not gonna. You guys know how much I love Bobby Green. Like, There's no doubt though. Like, I'm not gonna disrespect him here. He's obviously great. I will say, I do think if you were to take a guy outside the top 5, that like I to fight Islam and give him a competitive fight, I can't think of like many other fights other than maybe RDA that I would, of a guy that I'd rather have my money on against Islam than Bobby, just because I do think. Look, Islam's going to get takedowns here. I saw someone said today, like, "Oh, Islam's not taking Bobby Green down." He's taking Bobby Green down. It's fine. I'm fairly certain that's going to happen. What I do think, though, look, Bobby's a very good scrambler. Like, we saw Islam both in his fights with Arman and Chris Wade really struggle to control position against both of them. And even if you go back to his last fight with Moises, Moises was kind of able to get in that, turtle shell position up against the fence, and that's a position Green goes to a lot. The difference is Moises didn't really know how to get out of there, and Green does an excellent job hitting switches and just, look, Green's not going to settle and accept position. He's an excellent scrambler. We saw Wade and Arman both reverse position a bunch of times. Now, I'm not ready to say that Green is a better scrambler than Arman Tsarukyan is. I don't think that. I do think he's a better scrambler than Chris Wade is, though, and I think he's bigger than Chris Wade and physically stronger than Wade. And so Wade got almost a round of control in that fight. He took a round off Islam. And on top of which, like, I think Green is probably – I can't say he's the best striker that Islam has fought, but you look at the guys that he's fought, Hooker, Dober, they weren't guys capable of really fighting the back foot. Dober really needs you to sit down with him in the pocket or let him go forward on you. Same deal with Hooker for them to be effective. Whereas Bobby can actually jab and move, and that's something that I think is – pretty necessary to be able to, have even a chance in that kind of a fight. So yeah, I mean, I really don't think, at least early in this fight, that Islam is going to get a ton of control. I guess my big fear is that he could just outstrength him because Islam is so fucking strong. But Trinaldo is super strong and strong in the clinch, and Bobby was able to shuck him like fairly easily, and so I don't think he's going to shuck Islam easily. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think the strength gap's going to be quite as big as people think it is. And so early on in this fight, look, I expect Islam to get a bunch of takedowns. I expect him to get control on the fence and in the clinch. But I do think Bobby's got ways of getting out of that, and I think he has ways of giving him problems. My real question is, Islam's cardio has looked very good so far in the UFC, but that's in part, the only two grueling fights Islam has had were Wade and Tsarukyan, and both of those were 3-round fights. And even in those fights, he spent the majority of those fights in control positions. What happens if Islam has to shoot 15, 20 takedowns to win this fight? We haven't really seen that. It's very, very different from controlling someone on the fence or in top position to having to continuously work for takedowns in terms of how it taxes your cardio, just because of the explosive energy needed. And I think that is a very real question in this fight. I also think, if he cannot control Bobby heavily early in this fight, there's a chance that Islam could get 3 minutes of control on the fence or on the mat and lose rounds just from Bobby hitting him more, like when he's in space. And again, I don't think that's high percentage. But I think Bobby's got some tools here to work. I think he's going to be able to get up. I think he'll be able to stuff some takedowns here. And I think he's going to be able to have more success than anybody else has really had against Islam, on the feet. And so with that being the dynamic, look, you have to favor Islam heavily. Like you can't look at this fight and say, oh, Islam's not going to get takedowns. That's just being completely delusional in reality. But I can look at this fight and say, okay, if I don't think a guy can just completely insta-sub him or wipe him out on the mat and just hold him there for 15 minutes early, can he be minus 1,000? Like, I really don't think so. I'm not really sure there's anybody that should be minus 500 against Bobby Green, much less minus 1,000. The guy just has a very functional game for MMA. He's very high volume and he's an excellent defensive grappler. It's very hard to justify a price like that. So like, I think Islam like 70-75% is probably fair. Like I probably line Islam in the minus 300 range. Maybe even minus 400 if you wanted to get extreme with it and say he wins this fight 80 out of 100 times. But I think there is a lot of scope for Bobby to have success in this fight, in terms of the volume, in terms of making Islam's cardio work more than anybody else has been able to over 5. I think the small cage hurts Bobby a lot. And so, but I'm gonna stab Green just because at plus 550, plus 600, how wrong can you really be in that range? I have a guy who I consider fairly good, who's an excellent defensive grappler. Like I said, I think outside of Tsarukyan, he's probably more suited than anybody outside the top 5 to give Islam a real fight. So I'm going to play Bobby. I do think, though, the best bet of this fight is the over 2.5. And that all total you gave Luke is not bad either. I really think the chances of Islam insta-tapping Bobby Green are very, very low. I think if he's going to finish him, it's likely an attritional finish that comes later in the fight. But I would be very surprised at that. And I kind of think, look, Bobby's got hands, but he's not much of a puncher. And Islam, I don't really think has the precision on the feet to really – I mean, look, he could knock him out, but the only guy to knock out Bobby Green's Dustin Poirier. I really don't think Islam's going to knock him out. I love the over 2.5 here. And like I said, I'll have a small bet on Bobby, maybe a half unit, nothing serious. But, yeah, I mean – at the end of the day, I'm pumped for the fight. I'm pumped to see Islam actually fighting someone that's going to make him work, And I love Bobby Green. So honestly, okay, go Bobby.
I think what you said that towards the end there was kind of like the big thing. It's just like at plus 570, it's like if Bobby loses, I mean, he would have to get wiped for this price to really justify itself. So like, if you don't see that happening, you kind of have to have it.
Even if to justify it, like for it to justify itself, it has to be like Islam takes him down, passes him out, and subs him inside of like 2 minutes. Like that's like what you're talking. Like the margins. Yeah, it's MMA at the end of the day. Like guys, in the last month, we saw Francis Ngannou and win a fight wrestling. We saw Razak Al Hassan win a round 3 wrestling. Crazy shit happens in MMA all the time.
We saw Juliana Pena jab up Amanda Nunes.
Knock out him, beat Amanda Nunes standing. Like it's a weird fucking sport. Weird shit happens, like you have to have a unbelievably huge advantage to be a bit greater than 90% implied, I don't think you can say that about anybody against him. And I saw someone say this in our Discord earlier, but it's like I think there's a lot of people that think Islam is Khabib because of how dominant he's been. But he doesn't have the athleticism that Khabib had. There is a huge difference in burst between the two of them. Islam's an elite wrestler, but like Khabib's the best to ever do it. Will Islam get there? Maybe, but I'll tell you what, Khabib didn't have fucking Chris Wade taking a round off him. That never happened. Yeah, look, I'm gonna bet Bobby Green here. I'm gonna bet the over here. I think it's a fun fight. It'll at least be a nice litmus test for Islam. And guess what, guys? Does anybody really want to live in a world with Islam Makhachev as champion? Do you guys really?
Inshallah.
Do we really want to lay in prayer to be champion here? Because if he wins this, there's only one man standing in his way, and that's Charlie Olives. Then he's our only hope. Like Obi-Wan Kenobi, you know?
Bobby Green trying to save the world.
Yeah. Well, you know, it would be a hell of a main event though if Gaethje ends up beating Oliveira. Then we get Bobby Green, Gaethje for the strap.
That would be awesome, actually, to be honest. But you know what? I'm pretty sure that Joe Biden said, let's hold off on sanctions. We're sending in Bobby Green. And he's coming here to do it for America and the West. You know, that's the... Anyway, you guys have anything on Bellator you want to hit before we get off?
Nope.
All right. Yeah, guys, anything else to say? Any last words? All right.
War King Bobby guys, and War King Armin.
Go Bobby. Go Armin. Go USA.
Go Islam.
Go. But that'll do it tonight. We'll be back next week. I think next week's a much better card from a betting perspective. I like a lot of spots on it. It's UFC 272. As usual, you got me, John, at MMA Fox, Lags, at Danny_Lags, and Luke at SWR_betting. Guys, if you like the show, drop a like and subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. And look, if you're betting a lot this weekend, I don't recommend it. I think it's a shit card for betting. But good luck, and we'll see you next week. Take it easy, folks.